Hey everyone, and welcome to the screen recording of the editing section of yesterday's full wedding day. I thought that I would go a little more in depth today about what I do for images and kind of just show you all the variations of things that you would typically encounter on a wedding day. This program here is called Photo Mechanic. If you are not yet a person that uses Photo Mechanic, you can call and you can select images in Lightroom. There are ways to optimize Lightroom, so it is really fast, but I like to have kind of a separate process where I go in and basically what it does is it just loads your raw images super fast, or it loads technically the JPEGs as previews. But you're able to go through your entire gallery in kind of lightning speed. I am in no way affiliated with Photo Mechanic. They just make a really good product that I'm a huge fan of. I also feel like I only really use like maybe 10% of what the program is capable of. So if you have more needs, I guess, for just like check it out. I won't go into it because I don't want to speculate what you need. So basically I go through everything here, and then in the bottom corner here, you just kind of like select by color. So I have selected all of the images that are pink, and then I am unselecting all of the images that are not flagged. And I'm going to bring myself back and copy all, select all, Command A, and come over here into Lightroom. We're going to do an import. I'm getting in the way a lot today. I'll move myself back here. Let everything import here. I basically just go straight to develop. The only time that I'm ever really in library mode is if I actually have somebody that I outsource all my images. So I have somebody that edits, and when they send them back, sometimes everything will be a little bit too blue, or a little bit too yellow, or a little bit too much exposure, not enough. And maybe this might be about to blow your mind. This blew my mind when my friend Nova told me about it. And you can do so, like, say everything is edited, and you edited at nighttime, and you look at it the next day and you're like, wow, all of my exposures are consistently under, but the exact same. You select everything and you do you use these buttons here. And I never really spent too much time in library mode because I thought it was pretty useless. But you can just do little exposure bumps. So like point, or I guess like one third of a stop by clicking that, or one full stop by doing that. You can also do this with temperature as well. So if everything is just like a little bit too cool, you can make everything a little bit warmer or make it a lot warmer, as well as vibrance, clarity, other things too. But I wonder what's under here. What's under here? And more options too. But pretty much I just use the exposure and the temperature white balance to just like kind of do batch corrections on everything. And basically the benefit to that is that if you're in develop mode and you sync all of these photos like this, that it's going to make whatever your white balance is right here, it's going to make that the same across the entire board. It's not going to like increment it by like 1,000 Kelvin per image. But over here in library mode, it actually does. So something cool to know about. You'll maybe use it in the future. Maybe you're sad that you just went through an entire wedding day and made tiny corrections on everything. All right. So, I am going down here. Also, so I'm experimenting with a few new portrait style presets. I will give a shout out to Jamie Windsor, who created like this. It's aerochrome. It's it's pretty wild, right? So it's very, very, very an aggressive edit, I would call it. And it's I have a camera somewhere here. Let's see if I can find it. One second. This camera right here, which is, what is it? It's a Sony RX100 IV. So I had this converted to infrared because I wanted to make images like this. And I quickly realized that infrared photography is actually really hard. And I like to have, I don't know, like not that steep of a learning curve whenever I try new things. I just want to be good at stuff. And I found that I was very, very bad at infrared photography, even though I did have a camera converted. So I put the effort in, I tried, or at least I put the financial effort in. And then we went out to Iceland and I just really couldn't, maybe it was the infrared conversion. I don't know what it was, but it was very challenging for me to take great images. And with Jamie Windsor's edits, basically I think it goes through processes through Lightroom, which is a little bit interesting as a thing. It's kind of like if you have a video editor, you have Premiere, sometimes it processes things through After Effects, so you have to have that installed in order to access some of the things. I think that's kind of how this works, but very, very cool and exciting presets. So I've been playing around with a little bit of them. They make some cool things. Sometimes it's too much. I don't know. We're gonna go down here and we're gonna start with subtle. So subtle is kind of my new preset that I've been thinking of using kind of all year. It's available on Patreon. If you're a Patreon member, you already have access to it. The ones that are available for straight out sale are these 2018, 2019 packs, which also, like, any of these would do a good job. There's a little too much exposure in it now, but any of these would do like a really good job to show like the difference between that and the subtle preset. It's like, again, it's subtle. So there are, I guess, like lots of different variations, and pretty much all of them work on every image, which is great, but also gives you a little bit of, I guess, like paralysis when it comes to actually making a decision. I think the most important thing is to just make a decision and just start editing. Otherwise, you'll just not do anything for a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click subtle here, and then I'm going to select all, except for white balance, basic tone. Everything else comes over with the exception of just white balance, because white balance is the only thing that is kind of static in the camera that I've been changing manually. I also shoot a lot, as you probably know, on shade white balance. So you can see all my settings here, and you can also see all like ISO millimeters and everything else up here. But for the most part, I'm shooting shade white balance or cloud white balance. There's kind of like a more aggressive house shade, and then there's more laid back cloud shade. I'm usually on the house until I need a reason otherwise. Here, I suspect that I was probably just on the cloud, the basic shady white balance. I do that because if, for instance, like right now, what's happening behind me here, if you look in the little corner, what's happening behind me is that it's bright and sunny back there. So if I was exposing for sun, that white would be correct. The white back here, sorry, I'm all backwards. The white back here would be correct, and my face would be a little bit more blue than it should be. But because my face is technically in the shade, I white balance for my face rather than the entire scene. So I'm always exposing for skin tones, and I very, very rarely have people's faces in direct sun. Their faces are always in the shade, so that means that usually if you're exposing for their skin tone as far as white balance goes, the background, maybe it's going to be a little bit different, maybe a little more blue, but I'm happy to take a better skin tone over a better overall image. All right, I forget if I actually synchronized all of these. Now I have. So this room, definitely challenging. This is me kind of experimenting with off-camera flash. And there are, I guess, like a lot of variations of the images that I took from this today. So I'm just going to kind of go through some of the best ones. I personally like this style of image better. I know that all of us photographers, we always walk in, we put the dress on a window. I just don't like the backlit, like see-throughness. Specifically on like this dress, it just looks a heck of a lot better like this than it does the other way. I'm also going to crop this in because there's a little distracting little window in the side there. So I think something like that makes me pretty happy. I think that best shows the dress. The reason I think that most people do this kind of hanging on the window shot is simply because it is usually the easiest thing that you can do whenever you walk into a room, and usually you can clear the space around the window. But a lot of the time you can't clear another space to hang the dress or like a chair or a bed or whatever it might be. So for the most part, after adding my preset, you'll notice all I do is bump up exposure a little bit and black point down. That creates some natural contrast. I also wish I would have turned the light off beside me, because as you can see, there's some little red guys popping up here. You can kind of kill some of that if you want by going into the graduated filter here and bringing it down like that. I feel like that hides it a little more subtly than like trying to clone it out, or it's also a heck of a lot faster. And the button that I'm clicking on here is just the previous button. So it goes to the last photo. I guess it copies everything over. So it also copies my graduated filter as well as my... also, I've been turned on to... It's over here. The Loop Deck... Sorry. The Loop Deck Plus. It is the newest Loop Deck. And apparently, so somebody messaged me. I was like 80% sold on this. It's nice. So basically what it is, it's a console and it has all the sliders that are up here, but physical things that you can just like move. I was kind of sold on that. I'm like, that sounds nice, but I don't really move too many sliders. Like I could easily set this up with like another little MIDI thing, or I don't really find it too cumbersome to just like drag the exposure, drag the black point. But what this does is apparently there's a knob on it that does crop angle. So I can just grab the knob and just rotate it, and it will, one, activate crop mode, and two, just start rotating. So to have one button to just like begin crop spinning, I think is going to be massively helpful for my life as a photographer that rarely ever shoots exactly straight up. So this was hard because it's glass and there's just so many reflections in the room. I also should have polished the bottle a little bit better, but doing the best I can with the time given, because this is usually a pretty quick time where we're just like, get as much as you can as fast as you can. I find that if I'm there for too long, like the flowers haven't shown up, or there's a lot of different variables. So to just kind of arrive and to just do as much as you can kind of quickly, I'm totally happy to do. But to have too much time, I feel like people start asking questions. It's like, oh, the photographer is just like standing around, not really doing anything. And sometimes that is simply because there is nothing to do. And I would rather be a little bit more pressed for time and try to make everything happen really fast rather than just having time to stand around and talk to people, because I feel like that makes it a little bit, I guess, less professional. I don't know what's going on down here, so I'm going to just kind of get rid of that. You can use the bracket brushes, the open close brackets, to make your brush smaller and larger, and I think that's good enough for what I wanted to get there. I think this image is going to end up being black and white only because the color is like a little, I don't know. It's not the most ideal. It was very mixed light in here. So I'm going to use my black and white, just regular. Although that looked pretty nice. I feel like that doesn't quite look as nice as I thought it did. Something like that I'm a little bit happier with. All right, now that I'm outside, I might experiment with my 2018 Cool preset, because I know that basically just the mix of colors out here is a little bit challenging. Actually, that's all right. I kind of like that better. It's almost borderline a little too green, but I'm quite happy with that. I'm also going to crop this in just a little bit. I don't worry too much about, that way it's kind of nice and symmetrical. I don't worry too much about the idea that people are going to be printing these images, and if they go to print like actually this is probably a better 8x10 example than it is just if it's a regular image like this. When I'm cropping, I'm just cropping because I know most people are looking at these images on their phones or wherever, and it's going to be just a few images that are printed, so I don't constrain myself to any crops, because even if I did, then maybe they're going to want an 8x10, and that's going to look weird whenever I do like a 4x6 crop aspect ratio on it. So I don't stress too much about those. All right, I guess I can reset this. Actually, you know what? Make it even more square. I didn't really crop a whole lot, and then after using the Leica for a few weeks, I've noticed that I've kind of increased my the number of images I crop on. So I didn't love this painting in the background, but it's part of the room. It's part of the story, I guess. I tried to avoid it as much as I possibly could without getting too tight, because I feel like if you get really tight, it starts to get a little bit... it's like there's no context of the scene. So I could have shot everything like at like 85 there, but I felt that kind of 50 was a little bit better. This is like just an example of this 50mm lens just like being absolutely phenomenal. I'm so happy with this Z6/50 kit. I'm more happy specifically. I think this is the greatest combination ever done. This is the Z6 with the 35mm 1.8S. And I think that this is like, if I could only shoot with one single lens that's like one focal length and one camera body for the next like 3 to 5 years, it would probably be this. I realize that I rely a little bit more on my 85 than I do on a 35 on most wedding days. So maybe that's a bit of a, I don't know, a stretch, but I'm very, very happy with that combination. And if you're looking for, if that's like something that you're a little bit more comfortable with, being at 35, I would recommend this combination above all other combinations of 35mm lenses. So this is me. Basically, that was the color shift going from the Nikon Z6 into, I might actually have to... So basically, one of the issues with the Z6, which apparently there is a profile correct for it. Lightroom just handles the files very poorly. It handles them too green. So whenever you basically, like, I just kind of synced all of my settings for the Z6, and then they also sunk for all of the for these files as well. So I might have to do like a little Little reset on these guys. Man, everything looks really good. This is just really, really fantastic lighting. You know, I will, I'll continue through with this. I'm going to cool it down a little bit, and then I'm going to continue to sync kind of manually here. I almost like that white balance a little bit better. So, you know what? I lied. Let's go back down to this 5,000. I can't make decisions today. I feel like that looks pretty nice though. So each of these images, even though they are in a sequence and I try to keep things pretty, I guess, consistent, I think I'm going to kind of break that a little bit today. You know what? That looks all right. I'm happy with that. It's kind of the balance of consistency and also making each individual image look good. Cool. So I'm very excited to get that loop deck out and running because I think that it will speed this up a lot. And even if in the past I've had MIDI controllers, but they've always had a little bit of latency, so I wasn't able to edit quite as fast as I wanted. There's an example of the Z6 color just being too wild, but it's a pretty quick fix. The amazing thing with wedding photography is that you always are going to have usually something white or something black in the scene. Usually it's a white dress or a black suit or whatever that makes it very, very easy to use that little eyedropper on. I'm not worried too much. This background's a little bit bright, but I don't really think that that is too big of a deal. I tried to minimize it in real life there because I saw that it was just reflecting the entire sun, but there's only a few things that I could have really done and nothing, I don't know, like moving them around, and it just seems like it's a little bit too much work in order to I don't know, achieve a result that really isn't that much better. And it also kind of makes the client experience just like a little bit worse, I would say, that if I'm moving them all around to try to get one shot, one, it kind of makes them not 100% believe in me as a photographer, and they start to kind of question my skills a little bit. And then two, it's just kind of a waste of time that if that location specifically up there on the roof that I'm talking about still, even though we're a few images past, trying to make this look a little bit better, it's not the best, like the location itself is just not really that fantastic. So I wanted to get the photos because they wanted to also get the photos, and it is a nice backdrop, but I knew that there were some better options once we kind of got out to the floor. I'm way under on this. It looks good though. So I guess just as an example, one, I probably just maybe shot at too high shutter speed, but because ISO is at 50, it gives like a little bit of purple. It's also not like 100% in focus, I guess. I can come down here though. Doesn't really do a whole lot. So maybe this isn't the image that I'm going to give them from that set. But a few of them are a little bit under here just because we were going from walking down a pathway that was super bright to here. If I was using the Nikon Z6, I would not have fallen into this issue because what you're seeing through the viewfinder is actually the image you're taking, which is one of the main reasons why I do like the Z6. I like it for a bunch of other reasons too, but that reason alone is almost like, as a wedding shooter, it does speed things up on the wedding day significantly. So I like that white balance, but I'm just going to see what happens if I do that. I like that a little bit better. It's a little bit softer. But I think I'm going to leave the wide shots just regular. That does look nice. I think I'm going to leave those a little bit warmer, and I'm going to leave that one specifically just a little bit more, maybe magenta. I might warm it up a little bit. That's good there. Cool. Continuing on, all these forest guys, a little too under. This is some bike riding. We had a bike. Man, it does not know what to do with this scene. So as shot, it is, because that is the best white balance of all of those, rather than getting into something more custom. And I'm quite happy with kind of how this looks as well. This their kid. Perfect. This was another just kind of like little setup I did. If people are able to, specifically brides, if they're able to kind of kneel down, you can get a very good, very easy angle like that on them. It's just like pretty much like the most, I guess, like best, easiest portrait like that you can just make. I stole it from a dude named Becker. He lives in St. Louis now. And Becker was one of the guys that I looked up to when I was first getting started in photography. I clipped off a little bit of leg here. I try to either keep it a little bit tighter or a little bit less, but I feel like it's fine. I don't feel like they're going to feel too weird about that. That's technically a more correct crop, but kind of full length would have been better. I was struggling to, as people came around and kind of got closer, I am single point autofocus, so I was kind of struggling to keep up with them, to be exactly with them as they walked down the aisle. And then also I got this like same shot with everybody in this spot that looks the same, but everyone's reaction wasn't the best. So I would rather pick like a good reaction rather than like a technically correct crop any time of the day. All right. Here we are. Ceremony. Also, there's 123 images here, and if I was just like going through them without talking to you guys, I feel like it would not take me really that long at all. When I edit for engagement sessions, which is typically, I would say, like maybe I'm giving them 60 photos, I would say on average that probably takes me maybe like 10 minutes. Once you kind of get one correct in each section, it's very easy just to kind of sync it. And wedding day is a little bit more challenging because you just really don't have control over all of your surroundings, and it takes like a little while to get the correct white balance. I tried to set white balance on skin tone there, which doesn't really work out that well. Also, this was just a really challenging just setup as far as the sun kind of beaming on everybody. It's just not the best. So I will leave this a little bit warmer than it is in real life, just because one, it's kind of how they're going to remember it. And then two, also, I feel like it kind of hides more imperfections of the fact that they're just like in the blinding sun. I think that it makes it just a little more pleasing, I think. So the ideal angle is kind of behind them over here or over on the side, but I always find that it's a little bit weird to be creeping too long behind them on the ceremony. I think that you attract a little bit too much attention, and I'm not really into that. All right, so I think I shot this actually like auto white balance, and it's pretty good. So this is the 24mm lens on the Nikon Z6. Cool, happy with that. It almost looks like there's a polarizing filter on it, but there's not. It's just life. It just happens to look this good, I guess, today. And this is their daughter observing the ceremony. Again, first kiss, usually I start tight and then zoom out a little bit. Al didn't go too far away today because I think he had a little bit of a cliff drop there. So this is kind of the shot that I got. I can clone him out if I want. Maybe make it a little bit of a better image overall. Something like that. Nice and easy. And then as they're walking back down here, again, not the most ideal as far as like sun goes, that it's just like bright and sunny right on their faces. So I'm going to make it a little bit warmer. I don't know. That doesn't seem right either. Let's try the auto button. When lost, try the auto button. And it just makes it terrible. Great. I think that might be, I think it's time for me to install the Nikon Z6 profile fix that Lightroom has done. I assumed that in the next update it was coming. So I was like, oh, I'll just wait a little bit for it. But it is kind of a bit of a struggle. So this was pretty simple. This was just a bounce flash pointed up at the ceiling somewhere around here. And I feel like that's kind of the easiest way to light a scene like this. Like you don't really need too much light. You just need like enough to make sure everybody's eyes, nobody's in like complete shadows. And I think just like one simple off-camera flash like that does a good enough job. And I'm very happy with the images and also the fastness we were able to take them, especially like family photos. Like I just want to get them back to the day, and I want to do my job as efficiently as I possibly can. Stretch that frame out, make it a little more symmetrical. So I want to get my job done with everybody as fast as possible. There are times that maybe I would spend a little bit more time kind of like perfecting everything and making everything exactly perfect. But it's, I don't know. I think it's just like, that's my overarching thing, is that I want my couples to get married because they want to get married and not because they just want an expensive photo shoot. And most of them agree with that. Some I feel like maybe do want a photo shoot, but that's cool too. But I would say like 99% of my couples all kind of agree with the fact that they want to actually get married, and not just a photo shoot. So I want to make that as fast as possible for them. All right, this is a challenging scene because it's just a little bit backlit, or entirely backlit, or it's actually front lit, but backlit in this situation, kind of. Hopefully you follow. I can try to kind of calm this down a little bit, not with exposure, but just with highlights, to bring a little bit of it back. And I feel like that feels natural enough. I don't want to like overdo it so it looks like a crazy HDR image. I feel like that's not really my style, and it just does not look quite as good. Z6 problems. I'll start from the beginning here. And it's probably also good practice to, when you're editing, to edit all cameras, I think together. Everything should kind of match so that you're able to go from like image to image and everything will feel consistent. So I'm just basically aiming for the same level of warmth on that image. Also, there's some people in the back here. So I'm going to get rid of you. This might actually be a job for Photoshop. It looks like this is going to be a job for Photoshop. So there's a bunch of people in all these images, but it'll be easier to do a little content aware fill, or even just a quick brush out to get rid of them. Man. So pretty much it's just the white balance that Z6 versus D850 has issues with. It's not quite right. And same deal with these. I'm going to kind of go through here with Photoshop to do all of my disappearings. That one worked out okay. The challenge with, I guess, like cloning out in Lightroom is that you can kind of get here, but as soon as you go into the part that's in focus, everything usually gets a little bit weird. So you have to be very specific over where you stop. I can also see, personally, I can see the repeating element there. I don't think if you're looking at it for the first time ever, you'll see it, but I think it's easier to do it in Photoshop where it's actually a little bit, I don't know, more hidden, I guess. And you're able to have more control over hiding it. That little blur is what happens if you go too far into the in focus elements. So that's how I would do it if I had to do it in Lightroom, but I will be doing it in Photoshop afterwards. I feel like I have had enough of these images in here. Maybe I'll leave this and decide later. I think one of the things that that I do that maybe isn't the most efficient, usually I try to spend as much time getting like as efficient things as possible. What I might not do is, I guess there's a few things, but the one is that I'll leave too many images in, and then at the very end, I'll kind of go through everything and I'll make my final selects. I found that just kind of gives me a second chance to kind of pick what I think are the actual best images, rather than just like kind of rushing through and trying to make decisions all at once. And then I'll usually go through, especially if it requires post-production, and I'll make like a few of them perfect. And at that point, I'll focus a little bit more heavily on actually making, oh, miss some people. A lot of people just hanging out. That I'll actually kind of go through and just spend a little bit more time making like the specific best images perfect, rather than just like kind of giving them too many images. I feel like that is a better client, not necessarily experience, but deliverable experience. All right, now we're out of that room into completely different surroundings. So as you can see, again, a lot of different lighting situations kind of on this day, and really on any wedding day, that you're just spending a lot of time in different situations. There's, I guess, different ways to go about making it easier on you. You can set up camera profiles in your camera that are just like set up for like indoor, outdoor. That's worked really well for me, but I find that just shooting manual all day, that it doesn't take too much time. Maybe in the beginning it did, but once you kind of get somewhat proficient in manual, it does make it a lot easier just to walk into a room and to just know exactly what settings you're going to have to switch up. Another thing that I'm doing kind of in these shots is making them way too magenta, is just avoiding the elements that I don't really want. There's like a little Running Man exit sign here, and there's one over on this here. The only real unwanted element that I have in this photo is this little grate here and this one here. But other than that, I'm like happy with everything as it is in the image. All right, a little too yellow, too magenta here. So I might even sync all of these images across just for white balance first. Actually, you know what? They're all D850 images, so I'm just going to keep clicking the previous button. So as people are coming in, I'm always just shooting as many candids as I can whenever people are looking smiley happy, especially this day because I was by myself. So I knew that I wanted to get as many kind of candids as I possibly could within that. I might not deliver that one. I'll try to find a better version of the background there. That's, I guess, one of the problems with candids is that really just like one person not paying attention can kind of ruin an entire photo. I'll still deliver it because I feel like they'll want to see that. But overall, one person really can do a lot of negative things for an image, and sometimes they can't be removed, and they don't mean to be. They're just living their lives, and they just got caught in the background. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. This is very mixed lighting. The room is very, very incredibly warm, and the background is not warm at all. It's natural daylight. Here's where I went with some flashes off camera, I believe, and did my best to kind of make my own light coming from directly over kind of my right hand shoulder there. And in this situation, it easily could have been an on-camera light. There is no official reason for me to have like this has to be an off-camera light. I think that it just made my life a little bit easier just to know that like I had this light bouncing off this wall that was just this one big softbox. And if I needed to like move around the room, I could still move and I could still kind of maintain that quality of light. Things getting a little bit mixed now. This here, it did eventually move, so I'm happy that the DJ actually went up and stole that. So it's there, and then it's gone. Look at that. So this is just a quick example. This is like on camera, or not on camera flash. This is no flash. So this is just what it would have looked like had I just shot the room with nothing. My flash is kind of over here and bouncing up against this white thing that kind of goes around. So that's what it would have looked like without flash, which is fine. But adding that off camera does like 100% give a lot more direction to the light on the couple. Like they just look a lot better, I think, than me trying to just like get by without using it. As you can see, pretty significant difference. I'm going to cool it down a little bit, but three-dimensionality to the light. And then also when you have an off-camera setup, so my light's set up over here, you're kind of making a softbox for like all these tables as well. So everybody is looking pretty good over here. Then even when you get really far away, even though I guess the quantity of light isn't going all the way over here, the quality of light is that it's still kind of softboxy. As far as the quality goes of light, way out this way. So I feel like the correct white balance doesn't want to present itself. So this might just be a black and white image for now. And now I feel like I've been looking at it for too long, that I'm starting to not believe in the full quality of the image. I think that's another thing. It's like when you specifically if you've ever been going through fonts, like if you've typed your name and you've just been like going through a bunch of different fonts and trying to decide which one you like aesthetically the best, you kind of lose all comprehension of what the letters and the words mean. I find that it's the same if you stare too long at an image, that you just start to go a little bit crazy. So you have to kind of remember back to what the first thing is that you did. So like when you're like, okay, like I like this image because of this, you kind of have to go back and think little bit about that rather than just like deleting the image because you don't like it anymore. This is just, as I showed yesterday, just like how fast these lights flicker. If you're shooting at 1/200th of a second. So all of the lights are pretty much turning off and on, like just like really, really fast. So as you can see, each individual frame is completely different. Using an on-camera or an off-camera flash or even an on-camera flash just helps keep the consistency of light. So like editing this, like if I was shooting just like this, editing would have been a bit of a nightmare because every image is just significantly different. Whereas with an off-camera flash or an on-camera flash, you can kind of maintain more consistency and control of that. All right, this is the 50mm S Nikon Z6, and this is definitely one of my favorite combinations as well. Although I do like the Z6 or the 35 a lot better, I think overall. I don't know what it is. I'll figure it out and then I'll let you guys know, because I feel like I'm just saying this thing and I don't really know why yet, but I think aesthetically everything just comes together a heck of a lot better with the 35. And then the 50 is like as good as any other 50 that I've ever shot, but just the 35 combo is just so good that I'm just not going to finish that sentence. I'll just go back to working. This is why you shoot RAW, for whenever you don't have full absolute control over every single individual. I'd probably get rid of this little logo too. When you don't have control over every single individual element in every single photo, that RAW really just does kind of help give you the flexibility in post-production to make your photos as good as they can be. If you're shooting in perfect optimal conditions, honestly, JPEG's probably fine in a lot of cases. Nikon cameras specifically shoot really, really fantastic JPEGs in camera, and I have absolutely no complaints over them as long as you're shooting in the correct conditions. But then as soon as you're shooting in more challenging conditions, I think something that Nikon, Canon, Fuji in my kind of limited testing, and I think that's it. Maybe Leica as well, do a very, very great job of handling poor lighting situations. I found one of my struggles with Sony was whenever I found myself in challenging lighting situations that I couldn't ever get the image that I wanted from it, which is, I don't know, like that to sit there and kind of, as I was experimenting some of the black and white images, that I was just struggling for like a while. And at some point I was just like, I'll just make it black and white because it's going to make it a better image. I found myself doing that a lot with Sony images. So, that was kind of, I guess, my challenge with it. But if you're willing to kind of supplement that with a lot of off-camera light, or if you're shooting video is a little more forgiving when it comes to lighting as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts for today. Thanks for sticking with me, and I hope that you have a lovely time in the world, wherever it is that you are. And I'll see you next time on this channel. I'll never know how to end videos, regardless of how many videos that I make. I will never know how to make a consistent, clear, wonderful ending. So I'm going to click this button here that is going to make this video stop. See you next time. I have been photographing over 60 weddings every single year for the past 10 years, but it was by no means an easy start. I felt like I had the photography side of things under control, but after the couple sent me the first inquiry email, usually they would just ghost and I would never hear from them again. I had no idea what I was doing wrong, but it turns out that I was actually doing a lot wrong. Over the next years, I had to figure out exactly what works to book more couples, and more importantly, the couples that I actually wanted to be shooting weddings for at a price point that I was happy with. So here's the deal with Patreon. It is all my business and marketing videos for wedding photographers. Right now, there is well over $3,000 worth of content that you have instant access to as soon as you sign up. Everything from my Lightroom presets that I actually use every single day, to my contract, to my initial inquiry scripts, a full walkthrough of my pricing document, a live meeting with a real couple, a how to book more destination weddings course, as well as bonus on-camera wedding days, a full financial breakdown of my entire wedding photography business, as well as a breakdown of where I get all of my referrals from and how you can start getting more. Plus, you'll also be getting access to our members only Facebook group. For all of the already existing content, plus the new weekly content, every Monday I'm making a new video, every Wednesday we're doing a podcast, I'm asking you just to buy me lunch once per month. It is by far the best value in wedding photography education anywhere out there on the internet. You can cancel at any time, and if you join and you're not absolutely blown away with all the content, send me an email, I'll send you $20 back, full 100% money back guarantee. Wedding photography is such an oversaturated industry. By buying me lunch once per month, I'll teach you every single thing that I've learned over an incredibly successful career. I'm Taylor Jackson, and I hope to see you inside.